I'm here in Lugano, Switzerland for the 15th International Conference on Malignant Lymphoma. This is actually a really exciting conference for me because we have the opportunity now to present the long-term follow-up of the pivotal trial looking at ibrutinib monotherapy in previously treated patients with Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia. In fact, it was here in Lugano not too long ago that we had presented the first report of that trial. Since that time, what we've learned has been quite exciting. We've been able to identify the BTK kinase as a target of mutated MYD88. This is a gene that's mutated in about 95 to 97% of Waldenstrom's patients. And we were able, because of that discovery, to look at the activity of ibrutinib in this multi-institutional trial that will be providing the long-term follow-up. Since our last Lugano meeting, what we're able and very happily to report is that ibrutinib is highly active in patients with Waldenstrom's. The overall response rate is 90%, and major responses defined by partial response or better seen in approximately 77% of patients. Now, what's also exciting is looking at the genomic breakdown. In addition to the MYD88 mutation, there's also a mutation in CXCR4. This is found in about 30 to 40% of all patients, but it's very impactful because it can actually trigger downstream signaling that provides drug resistance against a number of agents, including BTK inhibitors. So we were able to actually map out what the responses were in patients depending on their MYD88 status and their CXCR4 mutation status. So what did we learn? Well, those patients that are wild type for MYD88, that small percentage of patients, they don't really show major responses. And this actually is not a surprise because the underlying genomics that we've discovered for these patients actually favor mutations that are downstream of Bruton's tyrosine kinase. But what we also learned is that CXCR4 does in fact impact those patients that are MYD88 mutated. Those patients that have, in addition to MYD88, have the CXCR4 mutation show fewer major responses, fewer VGPR or 90% or better responses. They take longer to get to those major responses, but as we learned based on the long-term follow-up, these are also the patients that progress earlier. Now, despite that, the overall progression at 5 years is still something to get excited over. For all patients, it's about 54%. We keep in mind that these are heavily pretreated patients in this cohort. 40% were refractory. That really does represent perhaps, identifying the most active single agent in Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia. And patients responded regardless of their prior line of therapy or responded based on whether they were relapsed or refractory, so we have to keep that in mind. Now, here's some good news. Those patients that were CXCR4 mutated still had a median progression-free survival of around 4 years' time. Again, not bad considering, what options are available in the previously treated setting. But what is really exciting is our ability to now innovate around these whole genome findings. There are antagonists against CXCR4. We're currently testing one, ulocuplimab. It's a CXCR4 antagonist antibody, and our early results are very, very exciting. So I think the ability to target both of these mutations has been recognized, and we're very excited to provide this update at this year's International Conference on Malignant Lymphoma.